Good afternoon, everyone. Hope everyone's having a good day wherever you are. My name is Justin Peter. I'm Director of Quest Nature Tours, and I'm pleased to welcome you to today's webinar interview with one of our tour leaders, Pete Reed, on the Bay of Fundy and Grand Manan. I know that some of you are still coming in now, so we'll just give it a moment here before we get started. It's a very nice day here in Toronto today, I have to say. I'm looking out my window here, sort of mostly clear skies with a bit of cloud, and it was certainly a very nice chill stepping outside this morning. And although we're kind of hoping for spring, it was a nice dry cold. It was a nice dry chill, which felt sort of refreshing and good. So hope all is well with you. Or maybe you're enjoying some signs of spring, like robins returning in flocks or horned larks singing in the fields. We have a lot to look forward to this summer, I think, or this spring even sooner. So I think, yeah, there's still some coming in. I see some of you there. Sylvia, hi Sylvia. Hi Vicky. So I think we will get started though, and once again, welcome to you who've just come into our webinar. Once again, my name is Justin Peter, and today it's my great pleasure to speak to you about one of our featured Canadian destinations, the Bay of Fundy and Grand Manan. And it's a tour we've offered in the past. We visited on tour in the past a number of times over the years, and the tour sort of went away for a little while and then it came back. Today we're going to be simply exploring the area. We're going to be exploring the Bay of Fundy with our leader Pete Reed. And this place for me is kind of I guess I have a bittersweet. Today is sort of an opportunity for us all to learn more about the area. For me, I mean, I visited the Bay of Fundy in 1993. Let's just say it was in my early years, and I visited it. I kind of knew what was special about it halfway. It was sort of a father-son trip to the East Coast. And although I was, very much a naturalist, birder, explorer at the time, I wasn't really as quite prepared for the place. So it was only years later when I got to appreciate all of the amazing things about the area. So today we're going to be exploring the place, asking questions, and Pete Reed, who's one of our veteran tour leaders, will tell us more about the area. Now, in fact, we do have a tour slated for this coming August. Whether and how that can happen, of course, we're not completely certain. We can talk more about that later, but I thought we'd just explore the area and see why it makes a great place to visit. And so I wanted to call on, we will have before I get to introducing Pete, I just want to mention we do have a little question section in your console. So if you have any questions as we're going along, things that pop into your mind before you forget them, be sure to check out the questions section and type in your questions, and later you'll have we'll answer your questions for you. But hopefully, and I hope that as questions pop up, they'll simply be answered as we go through this interview. So I want to bring on Pete Reed. Pete, where are you?
I am now sharing my screen. There I am. I'm in my library here.
You're in the library. You look very studious there in your library with all those books. I can just imagine if I were in that library. In fact, I have visited your library once for a few minutes, but I think your library would be a place to be, lost for a week, just poring over all of your manuals.
Weeks and weeks.
Weeks and weeks. Have you even read all those books on those shelves behind you and all around you?
Except that one.
Oh, except that one. Well, it's great. I love a good book collection. Now, Pete, of course, for those of you who haven't met Pete previously, Pete has been leading tours with Quest Nature Tours for a number of years. I think, I dare to say even before my time at the company. Not to date you, Pete, at all, but let's just say when I came to the company, I looked to you for leadership, and of course you've led many of our tours, and many of our travelers have gone with you to so many different places. I'm just trying to think. You've led tours to, you've led tours to Canada, Yukon, Alaska. You've led tours internationally, Brazil and India and South Africa, and those are like big ones, and I'm sure I'm missing a bunch of other.
Borneo, yeah,
Borneo, yeah,
Costa Rica, yeah,
yeah,
Amazon,
and Cuba as well.
Cuba, and the Dominican Republic now.
Dominican Republic, that's another one, yeah. So you've had a chance to see a lot of interesting places. And
people
I know you like going back to the same place more than once. I know that you, I mean, time is limited, but in our travels, but you certainly enjoy going back to the same place. And I know you've always, certainly from our discussions, discover new things about the place each time that you go. And that's sort of a perspective I'd say we share in common. Now, you've led our Bay of Fundy trip previously, and I know it's a place you like going because you've asked to be sent back to Bay of Fundy, and of course we're happy to have you go back. I'm sure that many of you have had a chance to, you know, maybe generally where Bay of Fundy is. Of course, the place we're talking about is this long bay, and I hope you see this on your screen. I'm pointing with my pointer. This long, how do you describe it? Almost a Y-shaped bay in between New Brunswick and Nova Scotia, and it's probably much more complex than we can even imagine. I'm sure many of our listeners today, you're aware probably that the Bay of Fundy is internationally known because it is the place with the highest tides in the world. And we found this great map online somewhere, really interesting, showing the heights or the amplitude of the tide in different parts of the bay. So of course, the leftmost part or the westmost part there is closest to the open ocean, whereas the easternmost part is the farthest away. And it seems like those tides are amplified in the bay, and the highest ones are in the farthest reaches of the bay. And I know, you know, on our tours, in the past we've visited different parts of the bay. I was able to find this map here with these segments, Pete, and we do in fact go to the kind of overlap all these areas. We're going starting, you know, usually we start in the city of Moncton, which is here at the top, and we visit the upper part of the bay over here, and eventually we get down to the western part. I'm going to talk more about that later because I'm going to ask you some questions about that. And I know you have a personal connection to this part of the world too. What is it, Pete, for you that makes just really generally the Bay of Fundy interesting to visit? And you know, in terms of the different areas, what are the features that are most prominent for you?
Well, in the beginning, when I first started going there, it was because of the tidal conditions, because of the high and low tides, and you could study the invertebrates and other animals that feed on the invertebrates, and just that whole ecosystem along the shore. I love rock pools. I love anything to do with the seaside, and it's a wonderful area. Well, of course, inland as well.
I think you're beautiful. A little bit slow
things like that. I'm trying to.
Are you there? I think your connection sort of cut out.
Did you get that last bit?
Not that, just the very last bit there.
Yes. Okay. Well, I was just saying that it is a special place, and it's a welcoming place to everyone.
Yeah, I'm not sure if we all caught that. I think we're having a little bit of connectivity challenge at the very moment.
Hey, Justin, why don't we try turning off Pete's webcam, and then his internet won't be as strained.
Okay, well, we love to see you, Pete, but Pete, if you turn off your webcam, at least your sound will be hopefully good. Hope that works. Do you want to try just turning it off? All right. So
yes, I will.
I think you
yes,
were saying,
my connection is often, my connection's often poor.
All right. Okay. Well, you're still there. So, so I think you were saying that you enjoyed, you know, with the tides, you enjoyed I guess you mean that you're going and walking on these flats then?
We do enjoy the tidal pools, and we'll be walking on the flats at Hopewell Cape, hopefully, and at low tide, not high tide, low tide, and also on Grand End. We're hoping to walk along and look in the tide pools, look for different sea creatures.
Yeah. Now, Pete, I know as we saw from that tidal chart, and I have a vague recollection of this from when I visited many years ago. But in the tide chart, we could see that the tide seemed highest at the upper part of the bay. And of course, we tend to meet here in Moncton at the top. That's where our planned tour starts. And I know that there's something interesting that happens. The tide is so extreme that, in fact, the ocean water is pushed up this river, the Petitcodiac River, and it leads to what they call the tidal bore. And I'm going to show that video here and hope you can all see it. But Pete, can you narrate what's going on here? Because this is on a freshwater river, quite far upstream of the bay of the salt water, and something's going on here.
Yes, and it's actually the old French name for it was Rivière au Chocolat, and you can see why, because it is rather muddy, but the ocean is pushing itself. The tides are pushing themselves more narrow all the time, right into the upper reaches of the bay, and then up into the Petitcodiac River. It goes up into many different rivers. You can actually surf on this. People get on surfboards and they surf along on this thing. It's really crazy. And it's twice a day, of course. And it's really fun and really close to our hotel. If we're staying in the same hotel as usual, we can just go out and have a look at that as it goes by.
Yeah. That's very cool. In fact, despite my vague recollections, I do recall distinctly this phenomenon. There was quite a bit of hoopla about it as it was happening. You can really see the Rivière au Chocolat, the chocolate-colored river. Here, I think the light transmission is really poor through the waters, but there goes the tidal bore. The tide's pushing all the way up the river. There, and you had mentioned there, Pete, Hopewell Rocks. Of course, this is the whole bay, and there's Moncton once again. And Hopewell Rocks is a place we try to get to. Of course, it always depends on the tides, and the tides are different throughout the year and from year to year, even on the same day, just because of the moon phases. But you talked about this place, Hopewell Rocks. Now, I visited it, and you said that we're, obviously, if we can get around it, it's an iconic place. I think most of you who are watching today have probably seen this image if you haven't been there yourself. And obviously there's people down here who are walking. So Pete, how many times have you been here where, at the time you arrived, you could walk down versus you couldn't?
Oh, well, it obviously, as you say, it depends on the tides, and obviously most of the time during the daytime, sometime we'll be able to get down there and right down to the bottom and have a look at all the rocks. It's a spectacular time when the waves are coming in too, because as you can see from the wet spots on the rocks there that haven't quite dried, it's pretty high there. But yeah, I would say we have a good chance of getting down there.
Yeah, that's cool, because I guess we had this other photograph that was taken at high tide, and obviously you don't want to be there at the time. Now, I think when I was there, I recall that the water was really far out, and I didn't take a photo at that time, but these flats, I mean, these are huge, obviously huge areas that are forming, especially the upper part where the amplitude is greatest. So at low tide, are you actually able to walk in these places, Pete?
I wouldn't recommend it too much, although the very upper area where there's a gravel base, we walk on that, and that's where we look in the tide pools. That mud in front of us there on that image, I don't think you could walk in that. It's pretty soft, but the sandpipers can walk in that.
Yeah, speaking of the sandpipers, so of course, one of the phenomenon I said I had gone there in 1993, and I think I was there in late July and August. It was in August, which is really too bad because I was unaware of this next phenomenon. That Bay of Fundy is especially well known for the upper part of Bay of Fundy, which is, as you just mentioned, they're the sandpipers, and I know the Semipalmated Sandpipers is one of the several species of sandpiper that breeds in the Arctic and in subarctic Canada, and then it winters in the Caribbean, South America. But huge numbers are passing through here, and the image might look like rocks, I suppose, but this is in fact, these are all birds that are mainly resting. What are these birds doing here, Pete, on these mudflats?
Well, the mudflats are host to all kinds of copepods and various mud shrimp that take shelter by kind of burrowing in a little ways into the mud when the tide is out. Otherwise, they're filter feeding when the tide is in. And as the tide goes out, these thousands and thousands, I think there was estimated about 500,000 passed through last year in the whole area of the upper Bay of Fundy. And that's where they congregate to feed on these things by going out in the mudflats. And what they're doing here is high tide forces them back up onto shore. And we go there at high tide to see this mass of birds.
Yeah, so it's a pretty big deal, I guess, because I know these are some of your photographs from previous tours. The Sandpiper Festival, sponsored by Coca-Cola, which seems, it's my kind of festival. It's like if I went to Point Pelee here in Ontario to look at birds in the spring, and it's the Festival of Birds, which seems sort of more general, but this is very specific. And I have to say, it's kind of nice to see that there is actually a Sandpiper Festival, and I guess it's a big enough deal then, and these are more of your photos that you've shared with us previously, that that there is in fact this interpretive center dedicated to the Semipalmated Sandpiper phenomenon. Now, I know as well, Pete, you've shared, you were talking about the tides. The sandpipers, I mean, it seems to me that they have a huge area in which to feed when the tide is out, when you have these huge mudflats that are out there. And you already mentioned that the sandpipers, you're seeing them when they're coming inshore. So I guess this is the situation, if we're looking out from the beach, that there doesn't seem to be really any mudflat here that I'm seeing, or it's under the water. And this looks a little more like sand that the birds are on. Is that what we're seeing here, Pete?
Yeah, they're on the fine sand and the gravel beds that are up high in the area. And they do congregate for safety, of course, because if they were spread out in their little resting areas, they would have more likelihood of any individual being predated. So it's better to be in little groups. So that's good for us, though. We get to see them.
Yeah. So I have a video here, and I believe it's that you took this one, Pete, as well, of what happens when the sandpipers were resting on the edge of the flats at high tide. Here, so all the flats in this image are totally covered with water, and when they get stirred by something, they make this sort of shimmering thing, the shimmering phenomenon, right?
Right. It's when they're flying, you see the white of their belly and then the black of their back, and as you can see, it ripples through the wave of about 20,000 birds here. So it really is cool. It's one of those wonders of nature, I'll tell you, when you see a flock of birds like that. Synchronized flying.
Yeah. Now, have you ever noticed what it is that's stirring them? Have you ever seen, because I know that certain things will prey on them, like merlins, which is a kind of falcon, or peregrine falcons. Have you ever had a chance to witness an actual chase of a predator trying to capture one of these?
Yes, I think it was one of my earlier times there. I saw a merlin chase them up, and it did actually catch one. I think it might even have been a merlin that chased this group up, because as I was filming it, somebody said that there was a falcon going by.
But you would, I guess you would imagine that it should be easy for a predator to just capture one of those birds, but I'm assuming it isn't that easy then either.
No, because if you're a hawk or something and you fly into a mob like that, you could get a beak or a foot in your eye, or a feather for that matter, and that would not be good for hunting. So they have to kind of skirt around the outside edge and try and get one of the ones on the outside edge.
Yeah, very, very, very neat, very cool. And I certainly know I have a reason just watching this, and many of you may feel the urge to go there. Oh, here's another video you had. This is when they're settling back in, I think, here.
Yeah, I was going to say that they have been doing studies on them, Justin. Maybe you've heard about this, and they are unfortunately dropping since the 1990s. when there used to be about 1 million coming through. Now, as I say, is only about 500,000. They're losing at this point about 5% a year.
In the population. Do we know why that is, Pete?
Well, they're still doing studies on it, but I mean, they've got illegal and legal trapping that goes on in hunting in their winter habitats down in South America. And then, of course, with reduced food availability resources, because maybe people are harvesting the krill and the small shrimp that are there, as well as, of course, the change in habitat because of global climate change.
Yeah, that is too bad. Yeah, so I guess, well, in the meantime, though, I guess the fact that the bay is there is very important for those birds as I guess it's a replenishing site where they're going to spend. So they're sort of interrupting their migration, as I recall, Pete. They're coming down from up north, but they don't go straight to South America. They're stopping over in the Bay of Fundy for a number of weeks. That allows them to fatten up, and then they carry on. So the bay itself, though, is very important.
Oh, it is. It's very important, and this area here is protected that we're at, and a lot of areas are very protected. They gain about, I think it's something like twice as much weight. I mean, they go from about 20 grams to 40 grams, and then they fly, and you won't believe it, about 3,500 kilometers to get. And that's one single flight to get to wherever they're going in the winter, which is usually along the coast of South America, and as you say, a bit in Central America as well as the Caribbean a little bit.
Yeah, so it sounds like they can almost double their weight while they're in the Bay of Fundy. So
yeah,
hence hugely important. So this was a picture. I think one of our last group participants took you in this photo. This is you in the green hat. So it looks like you're pretty close to the birds, and I guess the path, because I saw that this other photo here is right beside the beach. So you're getting them fairly close, because I think a question would be, well, how far were those birds when you saw them shimmering? And it looks like you're at a reasonable distance from them, or you have reasonable proximity to them. So I guess you can enjoy that even without binoculars. You could just look out and see this phenomenon. It's not these aren't little specks that are far away. They're fairly close in then. Would you say that?
Right, they are. And you can see how close we are to the beach just there, and the path stays that close. And the place where we are is just down where it goes out of sight behind that small hill there. So it's not very far away from where we're even walking just there.
Yeah. The sandpipers are small, and I guess, I mean, we've always managed to see them, and obviously it has to do with the tides. Like, we have to look. I know when you're leading the trip, you're always looking, and things can change based on the tides. Or you negotiate that. I guess if we were to miss the sandpipers, which we never do, but that we have the guarantee of seeing this one. Pete, can you tell me more about this Semipalmated Sandpiper here? Are you there, Pete?
It's not that's a monument. I'm there. It's called which is that little town where that sign was. And it's a place that we actually go and we stand underneath it and take a group shot there.
Yeah, so this is a giant, this is huge.
Oh yeah, it's I would say 10 meters tall, maybe, I think, something like that.
Yeah, so it's a big monument. So I guess this shows you just how important the sandpiper viewing is for the locals and for the local culture. I guess when you have that festival, that's an important thing. So that's definitely something to look forward to seeing in the Bay of Fundy. Now, there is that part that I want to talk about, which was sort of the other part of our tour, but sort of another dimension of the Bay of Fundy experience, which is Grand Manan Island. This is the famous Swallowtail Lighthouse, I think. I know I'm going to ask you about this lighthouse again, Pete, but moving down the bay, so the sandpipers are kind of up here in the upper reaches of the bay where we're seeing them, and then moving down here, still very much a Bay of Fundy, but Grand Manan, which is over here, this island here, I'm going to zoom in, just move in a little bit closer over here. We've also included it in this Bay of Fundy and Grand Manan tour. Grand Manan is part of the Bay of Fundy, but we all separate it. We always talk about it as a separate thing. I'm not sure how that ever came about. I don't know. Can you comment on that, Pete?
Well, I'm really glad that we've got it in there because, of course, when you see the upper reaches, you're seeing the really, really high tides and low tides, of course, when it's on low tide. And then that way you're going to get to see the shorebirds. But when you go to the Grand Manan Island, now we've got a chance to go out into the sort of the aquatic zone and see what's happening out, yes, in the Fundy Aquarium ecozone. And we're going to be able to see, well, we won't see schools of krill, but we'll see what's feeding on the schools of krill that are there because of the upwelling of this bay because of the tides. And it's a remarkable situation to have such rich waters there, and the whales certainly take advantage of it.
Yeah, because I imagine with that water kind of going into the bay, going up the rivers and coming down, pulling out sediment, it's all coming in and out of the broad entrance of the bay, which I'm sort of assuming it's also deeper, although I'm not 100% sure on that. But we know that, I mean, we've gone there in the past on our tours, or travelers have gone. It's a good place for whales, I'm assuming, because of the nutrient-rich water. You're talking about krill, so whales are there. And you know, we go by ferry to reach the island, and then we've typically spent a few days, a few nights there at a single hotel, which I'm going to ask you about later as well. But tell me about, I mean, Grand Manan obviously being part of the ecosystem of the Bay of Fundy ecosystem, but also I have not been to Grand Manan myself, so I want to know more. I mean, tell us a little bit more about the atmosphere of the island. And I mean, I take it it's sort of it's a quaint place to go.
Yes, it's a wonderful, quaint place. It's not as much affected as the mainland hustle and bustle. This is a laid-back community of maybe 2,500 people, and most are fishermen. I mean, these are people that go out in the ocean and they go for lobster and for fish and so on. Herring was a big deal. These are herring. This picture you've got up is of herring houses where they smoke the herring and so on. Anyway. They now have tourism though now because of the whale watching tours and so on. But it's a really good place to live as well. Some of my in-laws went there to retire. It's a great place.
Yeah, so it looks nice, and it's you know, very much a living community. And I was looking at just the sizes just to sort of get you know, to brush up a bit on Grand Manan, and it's looks like it's 24 kilometers long and 10 kilometers wide at the widest point. So it's not very big. So I'm imagining it's sort of it's a tight knit community, and we get to enjoy.
Everybody knows everybody.
Yeah, it sounds like a great place. Now, of course, when we go to the island, we're of course staying on land for a few days. But we have some excursions on land, but also we generally have planned in the past 3 different sea excursions, like half-day excursions. And I know obviously with whales being a very big natural feature, just from the wow factor, that's an important one. Now, I think this is one of your photos as well of one of the boats that we're taking out to look at whales. And can you comment a little bit about just what it's like to be out on the open sea here, Pete?
Well, this is.
I'll let the video play here for a second, actually, okay, just to get a sense. I think you took this video.
Yes.
So that must have been pretty spectacular.
Well, it makes me smile every time I see it because these animals, they're so huge, but they're right beside the boat. I mean, it's not like he's bothering them in any way. They're used to the people coming out and seeing them and so on. And, you know, lots of whale stories where they don't seem to worry about humans so much anymore. But these are humpback whales, and that's probably the most likely big whale we're going to see at this point. But there are around 12 species that are possible out there of cetaceans, but
Yeah, now the one I do remember, because I took one short whale watching tour right off of Black's Harbor, so not going to Grand Manan, but just kind of along, inshore. And one I remember seeing for the first time was this one, which is the Harbor Porpoise, right?
No, this one is actually one that we see further deep. This one is the white-sided porpoise.
Oh, okay, so I haven't seen this one. I guess the Harbor Porpoise is all dark then, is that right?
Yes, I'm sorry. This is the white-sided dolphin. Sorry, I get my dolphins and porpoises mixed up sometimes.
Yeah. Well, it's hard to see. I just have this one photograph of it. It looks like it doesn't have much of a snout there. So you get dolphins and porpoises. I remember the Harbor porpoises surprised me because they're only they're 2 meters long. They're tiny.
Yeah, this one is about 2 meters long as well, 2.5. We also see minke whales there, and we got our fingers crossed every time to hopefully see the right whale. The right whale, the northern right whale, is so rare anymore.
Yeah. So that's fun, and I guess every trip is a little bit different. In the video there was the whales, the 2 humpback whales that were sailing by, and there were all these birds around, and I guess the birds are there for the same reason that the whales are there for, right? So you'll have, I suppose, the seabirds are probably just out there to eat, but they're also benefiting from whatever the whales are storing up or corralling. Can you comment more on that? How that is, Pete, with the seabirds?
Yes, they're there because of the krill. We can't really, this is a greater shearwater here. We can't really see the krill in the water, but they know they're there. And when the whales are spouting, they kind of follow them along. And if they'll dive in and get the krill or whatever. And sometimes when these baleen whales are sieving these bits of krill, some of it pops out of their mouth, and they'll be able to get that as well.
Yeah. So these things, I get the feeling from the video and the photos that you've taken that these things are right there. So there's the whales, and if the whales are happening, are feeding right in front of you, hopefully, and then you have all the seabird activity. So you're having seabirds like the shearwater, and I guess gannets occasionally you'll see them too, right?
Yes, there are colonies nearby, and this is an adult bird, and it's taking advantage of the same thing. It's looking for the krill and the various other things. It sometimes goes for bigger. It obviously goes for bigger fish, which are feeding on krill as well.
Yeah, that's very, very nice. Because I think, I tend to think of gannets. You associate them with Gaspésie, with Rocher-Percé and Ile Bonaventure, and the Gaspé region of Quebec, but they are widely distributed, I guess, in this area too. Now, I know that the whales, I guess we expect to see humpback whales on every visit with reasonable effort, and the other whales, perhaps rare ones like the right whale, are not necessarily expected. If there would be bonus. I know on the last tour, Pete, I'm going to show a couple of images here from the last tour, because you got something which is a pretty spectacular find on one of your boat rides, and it was this fish.
Yes, it's called one of the names is moa moa, but the other one is giant sunfish. It's lying on its side here. That's one of its side fins there that it's kind of waving around. Maybe it's even using it as a sail. I'm not sure. This creature is a small one, and it was 2 meters long at least, maybe more. But it's lying on its side, and out the top end to the sort of the top part of the body where the waves are just flipping over the body is a huge top fin, absolutely huge, that sticks up. And then they also have one like that at the lower part, a little bit smaller. And so they almost, there you go. They almost sail in the water. They're very bizarre, but this is something that you don't see too often, I'm telling you. And there's always surprises on this trip when you're out in the ocean.
Yeah, so that photo was one of your photos. This photo, I found it on the internet just to show you what this fish looks like. And so you said yours was small. I think they can, from the body itself can be more than 2 meters in, I have to say, diameter, I guess, because it's almost round. and I guess it'll swim upright, but then it'll do that thing on its side where I guess that's where the name sunfish, ocean sunfish, comes from, because it's said to be sunning on one side. I don't know if it's actually sunning itself or not, but I guess it's really more of a tropical fish found around the world. But for whatever reasons, I guess the waters and just the currents later in the summer, I suppose, will transport some of them along. So you were certainly very lucky. And I think one of our travelers, we got some video here, one of our travelers, Janice, on the most recent tour, took some actual video of this thing. Now, it's not that eventful because it's just sitting there on its side, sunning, but it looks like it's, it's kind of moving the pectoral fin a little bit there.
Yes, yes, it did. Yeah.
Yeah.
It moved. We had to follow it along to get good pictures, but it moved along quite a bit. Yeah, I was going to say that the 2 meters is the length of it. They can be 3 meters from top of the fin to the bottom of the fin.
Yeah, so it's really a beast. And we just overheard some commentary. I think it was from you, Pete, in the video that it's eating jellyfish. It's a jellyfish eater.
Yes, they do. They do eat jellyfish. And they do come to these waters because it is warmer in the summer.
Yeah, that must be why. So that's not necessarily an expected thing, but something that could happen. And you'd be very lucky to see it, but I think it'd be pretty awesome and thrilling as well. So really interesting to look at. Now, we started talking about, of course, going to Grand Manan. We're staying on Grand Manan. We have the different boat rides. One of the boat rides we have is that one which is dedicated to whales. Now, I think we can probably see whales on all of the excursions, but there's one, there's one excursion that we always plan. That's an important part. It's a visit to this island, Machias Seal Island. And I'm assuming from the name seal, that means it's known for its seals. But I think, Pete, maybe the real reason we're going, the single biggest draw of Machias Seal Island that I understand is the Atlantic Puffin. Is that right?
Yes, they are one of them. Well, they're the main shorebird that nest there, and we want to see them because they are just beautiful, of course, and very clown-like.
Yeah, and I guess they're abundant enough that they are. I don't want to say they're everywhere, but certainly from your photographs, it gives the impression that they're, any available open space is an open invitation for puffin to land. Is that the impression? Is my impression correct, Pete?
Exactly. The Canadian Wildlife Service set this building up. They're studying them there, of course, and the Canadians run the lighthouse as well. These birds nest in the soil at the top there. Just beyond the rocks, or down in, if they can get beneath and into the rocks, they can go in there and tunnel in there as well. And those, there's just hundreds of them, and it's really great to get really, really close to them.
Yeah, that's great. They're an ever popular bird, and I guess for those who are particularly keen on seeing birds and also photography, it's a great place, because I know that this bird, which is a close relative of the Atlantic Puffin. This is the razorbill. I've seen some really nice photos of these birds from Machias Seal Island. Another reason to go, because they're a really sharp looking bird. And I'm assuming you see them in good numbers as well then, Pete, for real.
Yes, we do see them. They're in the water right beside us when we're looking for the puffins, and they're also nesting on the island.
Yeah, very nice. And you are seeing seals as well on the Seal Island.
Yes, at the I think it's the south end of the island or the southwest end of the island, the one that faces the United States. There's a couple kinds of seals there. Gray and Harbor, I think, are the two, but I can't remember exactly right now.
Yeah, that sounds about right. But no, this island, of course, you're going to the island. We have in the past, I know from what you've reported, I mean, we've sometimes landed on the island on this Machias Seal Island, if tides allow, or if we don't, at least we get a chance to get a close view. And as I understand, we're going on a larger vessel, and then we disembark and go into a smaller vessel like this one here, which is letting us get really close to the island, whether or not we can land, so we get good views. Is that right?
Right, yeah, this one is towed behind the big boat, and we go right out on this. About half the people get onto this one and go onto shore if it's possible. Sometimes the wave action is such that the landing can't be done. Doesn't matter. You go right up to the puffins, and it's funny. This driver of the boat here has a peculiar way of making squeaking sounds that the puffins seem to absolutely adore, and they come right over to the boat. It's crazy. They're almost attracted to his little squeaky sounds.
Okay, so that's interesting. I did not know the puffins could be called in by imitation. That's a fairly rare skill, I would say. So you're seeing puffins, you're seeing seals as well, close. So certainly, I mean, these are fairly adorable animals. I think you could probably be happy watching them for a little while. I think they're very restful.
Yeah, they're having a nap for sure.
Having a good nap. It looks very relaxing. Yeah. So of course, in between our generally our 3 sea excursions from Grand Manan, we're also spending time on the land, on the main island, Grand Manan. We're getting a look at Grand Manan Island itself. I assume this is another one of your photos here. The geology looks pretty interesting. It reminds me a little bit of sort of basaltic columns in Ireland. I don't know if I'm getting that wrong, if that's just my impression, but.
That's right. It was based on basalt columns like that over on the right-hand side of the picture, especially you can see them, the hexagonal columns. And but it's overlain by, well, because of the glaciers and so on, it's overlain by other kinds of rock, and there's metamorphic layers as well. And we'll see that on the sort of the east side of the island when we're at Castelia Marsh and places like that.
Oh, yeah. Now, back on land itself, I mean, we've planned some good time, and it seems like a really good place also to just wander about freely. I get that sense that sauntering is allowed, not on private.
Yes,
there seems to be a lot of place to wander freely. Beach combing, I'm assuming, is that something we can do?
Yes, some people are. Yes, and this is Castelia Marsh at low tide, and it's wonderful because you can get right out to where those tide pools are. It's not exactly mud flats, as it's more sand, and therefore you can walk out there and you can look for little creatures that are in the tide pools and the fish and so on, starfish. And then, of course, as you say, beach combing along the little lines there. You can see the high tide water mark there, and you can look for different things there.
Yeah. That sounds like fun. Beach combing is a great activity when you're on the East Coast. And I mean, it looks beautiful. I think this is another one. Was this also a Castelia Marsh, like sort of inland?
Yeah, this is. They've made Castelia Marsh into a bird sanctuary because there are a number of species that are there. And the saltwater sparrow is one of them, the one that used to be called shark-tailed sparrow, but now is split. The saltwater sparrow is there. And that one is, that place has hundreds of species of birds that seem to end up there. So where there's often surprises there. I don't know if you have a picture that I sent you, but we had a burrowing owl there.
Hold that thought, Pete, because I'm going to come to that.
Okay.
Oh, yes. So I think you have some good spots for a little bit of outdoor picnicking as well.
Yes, this is at the end of one of our walks. Behind the people at the picnic shelter is the Anchorage Provincial Park, and we have a little walk along the coastline through the bush, which is both 3 or 4 different habitats, and then we end up at this little red point, and we have our lunch there. Okay.
Now, speaking of walking and exploring the island itself and having a bit, sort of exploring at a more leisurely pace, if you will, when I talked about the Swallowtail Lighthouse, and previously you've mentioned to me that this is it's an important place for a specific reason, right?
Yes, when we come on the ferry, and we get there, you'll see a lot of the Grand Mananers who've maybe been away for a while. They'll crowd over to the side of the boat, and it's their first sight that they know that they've come home.
Okay. So it's a landmark then, a kind of a beacon.
Yes, and an emotional one for people who've been away for a while, for sure. And it's just something we do the same. We get up on the top of the boat and we look for the Swallowtail Light as we approach it.
Okay. How long is that ferry ride approximately, Pete? Can you remind me? From the mainland to Grand Manan?
I think it's 32 kilometers, so what, 2-3 hours at the most?
Okay. So you have good time at sea, and then you actually will come upon the island like that. That sounds very nice. And we have a chance, because I know I've seen this lighthouse has also been sort of a famous landmark for photography different times today. We will have a chance also to get near it, right?
Yes, it's not very far from where we're staying, and we go up there. There is a chance to walk out to it if people want to, that's the part on the right is the caretaker's cabin, but it's more of a museum now. I think it's an automatic light now, but it was built in the 1860s.
Yeah, very interesting. Now, once again, I mean, we plan, when you're planning any trip, you plan for certain things to happen a certain way. You hope to see this, that, the standard features of a place, but there's always room for surprises. We talked about the ocean sunfish a couple of moments ago, and on your last trip, I think you had this great surprise, and I think I had heard about this maybe being there before the trip actually started, and then you went and it was there with our.
Yes.
Tell us about this, because I believe you've seen this bird in Brazil on tour.
I've seen it. It's following me around. I've seen it in Brazil. I've seen it out west in Moose Jaw, and I think a couple other places in the world, especially. But it's the great burrowing owl, and for those of you that know a little bit about this owl, not only is it cute, but it actually can, using its feet, work its way into the soil and has its nest underground. And this is such a rare sighting there. I'm just surprised that it was there. I don't know if it's still there. That was like 2 years ago, I think now.
Yeah. So I guess it, so yeah, it burrows, and it also uses prairie dog, abandoned prairie dog burrows also to nest. And
Right.
Brazil last time, I mean, that's a huge range, right? And I saw some at Iguazu Falls in Brazil when I was there last, with a whole family of young peeking out of this hole in the ground. And I guess this one here, for whatever reason, got disoriented, flew as far east as it could go, which is Bay of Fundy, Grand Manan Island of all places. And the tour started and it was there. It just arrived like the day prior, it seemed to. So that's a pretty spectacular, rare find.
Yes, I had done a little research. I think you did too, and found out what special birds or animals we should be looking for before we go. And we had a look for it. Had our fingers crossed that we'd see it when we got there.
Yeah, and as luck had it, you saw it. Now, you talked earlier about Grand Manan being a tight-knit community. It's certainly obviously being accessible only by ferry, and you're saying 32 kilometers. I mean, it's a remote community, and it has a certain feeling of yesteryear. And I know that we try to enjoy that when we're there as well in the places we're staying. And the Marathon Inn is our choice hotel there, and I know you've raved about this hotel, Pete. So I'm just going to let you tell us more about the Marathon Inn.
Oh, well, I could probably go on for about another 40 minutes on this, but enough to say that it is a historic site. It's a Canadian historic site, built in the 1890s, and I think it's always been a hotel. There are 3 separate buildings on there now. This is the main part, but there are a couple of others that have been added on over the years. And it's so quaint and so wonderful. I don't know if you've still got some inside shots that I sent you, but
yeah, I did collect some. I guess this is the front porch and then the inside.
Yeah, there's one of the sitting rooms. There's also a nice little bar sitting room. The rooms are all different. They're all different, but they all have ensuite bathrooms and stuff like that. So it's really, really cozy and great views out the window.
Yeah. Looks very nice.
They are.
Now, technically, Pete, I mean, you alluded to it earlier, and I did as well. I mean, technically, on tours, of course, you stay at the at the accommodations we use for a group. But technically, if you wanted to, you could go to Grand Manan and you'd have your own place to stay, right? Because I think you have relatives on Grand Manan, as you mentioned already.
Yeah, that's my brother-in-law Pete, Sue, my wife's brother, and that's my son and my daughter. This picture was taken about, I think, 1980. I'm going to say 88, because Pete and Carmi he was a RCMP guy and worked up north, but they retired to the island in the kind of mid to late 80s, and we started immediately going there because it's just such a wonderful place to go.
Yeah, well, that's a great connection to have. I think this was another, I believe this is your wife, Sue here, right?
Yes, and Pete's back, and that's Carmi on the left, and their home is up on the hill in the background there. That's Seal Harbor, and they've got a nice little beach there, and they run there and so on. And they've raised their kids there. They've brought them home from up north, and they've raised their kids there, and so they enjoy the island as well. They're both away right now, but they're islanders through and through. They'll be back every summer.
Yeah, and I guess we'll have an opportunity. I guess obviously you have a chance to meet them, but we've met them in the past.
Yeah, we bring them over to maybe a little cocktail party at the marathon, and maybe have dinner with them. And all of our people love talking to the islanders and getting kind of really neat stories from them about their life there and the lives of the people there. They don't give any secrets, of course.
Oh, that's great. So that's great, Pete. I mean, it looks like I don't know if you're able to share your webcam now, but if that'll work. But I mean, it looks like a great part of the world. I certainly know. I mean, when I went, I was impressed by the tides at the Upper Bay, and certainly whatever marine life I had a chance to see in the Outer Bay or the Lower Bay. Impressive. I love, the smell of the sea air. I mean, I can remember those things for strong impressions, but it looks like there would be a lot to go back to if you had been there as a more maybe casual observer. There would be a lot more to do and to see. Certainly any exploration looks fairly casual, fairly relaxed. And it looks, I mean, it's a fairly dense part of the world as well. So over even a few short days, you don't have to do a lot of travel. It seems like it's really dense, and you could go just short distances from one part to another. I mean, obviously that's something that we try to feature in our tour there, but it looks like a great little part of the world.
And there's lots of options for people as well. I know that the Anchorage walk is very easy. It's actually wheelchair accessible. There are a couple of walks that are optional that we can do as well. But even if they're optional, the people are still there. They're still wandering around in the area nearby. And then if somebody wants to go down to, say, something like the Hole in the Wall, which is a bit of a downward slope, and then come back up. The up is coming. That's the hard part. They can try that if they want to, or they can just stay up at the top with me and wander around and look for birds or whatever.
Yeah,
something for everybody.
Something for everybody. Yeah, look.
And lobster dinner.
And lobster dinner. Yes, seafood, a very, very important ingredient.
Hopefully there. Yeah.
Very important feature.
I think so.
So I did have a question. Alana has been listening. She's asking, what is the water temperature in the summer? And I'm not sure if she's asking this because she'd like to, swimming, is swimming an option? What is the water temperature in the summer?
Well, I don't know the exact water temperature, but I know that my daughter-in-law, not my daughter-in-law, my sister-in-law goes into the water during the summer. I've been in the water during the summer. I've kayaked around, and the water is, I mean, it's brisk, but probably no more brisk than up in the lakes in, say, cottage country north of Toronto.
Yeah. So I'm sort of assuming, I mean, if you were to swim or take a dip at all, Grand Manan would be your better option than, the Upper Bay, where you have the huge mud flats, where the water's this thin, probably very, very shallow for a long distance. That's probably not a choice area. I guess with the water being turbid up there, it's not too good.
Right.
Either. But as I recall, vaguely along the coast near Grand Manan, the mainland, it was fairly clear water, though.
Yes, the water at Grand Manan is clear as well. Well, as I showed the picture of Castelia, that area, the beach at Seal Cove, for instance, is very much beach-like, and there's 2 or 3 others, probably within walking distance of the marathon that people could go to if they wanted to, or when we're out having our picnic lunch somewhere, they can go down to the water and dip in or go for a swim if the tide's in. If the tide's out, they don't want to walk for a mile out to where the water is.
Yeah, I suppose so. Yeah, so that's really great. I didn't see any other questions at the moment, but of course, I just want to remind everyone that we will be sending you a link to this interview, to the recording of the interview rather, and you'll be able to watch it again. And of course, if you have any questions that come up later, we do love the Bay of Fundy and Grand Manan, and we are planning our next trip for this August of 2021. And of course, with fingers crossed that might take place. And but of course, we're still planning, and we always plan this trip for the same time of year. So if it's a place that appeals to you at all, and you like to travel with Pete as well, I might add, it's one to consider. It's offered early August every year, and we'll send some more information about the tour if you just want to consider it. But you can always drop us a line here, give us a call. We love getting your calls, or send us an email. And if you have any questions for Pete as well, we'd be happy to pass them along to him. What is in store for you this afternoon, Pete?
I think I'm going to continue looking through my pictures of India. It's been a few years, but I still have been messing around with those, and then I'll make dinner.
Yeah, well, that's great. Yeah, you know, I think having an interest in nature and travel gives us something to look forward to. It's obviously something that's been in short supply in recent times. So we look forward to returning to our discoveries in faraway places and closer to home, like Bay of Fundy and within Canada. So thank you so much, Pete, for sharing your insights on the Bay of Fundy and Grand Manan, and I hope that gives you a little bit of a taste, an overview. And have a great afternoon, Pete. Thank you. And to all of you who've been in attendance, please, thank you very much. And feel free to be in touch with us for any of your travel questions. And enjoy the rest of your day. Have a good afternoon, everyone. Bye, Pete.
Bye-bye. Thanks.